Refactoring is easy. Redesigning, also easy. Software development, easy. At least, so we thought. One day, we decided to change everything. We want to make our system better, more scalable, more maintainable. Everything written properly in pieces. We had a huge case of the Hubris, and feedback, but Hubris. We said it's going to take 2 weeks maximum. Well, that escalated quickly. By the end, there were 2 developers. It took us around 8 weeks of work, 5 major production issues, 10 trays of night pizza, 4 nights falling myself asleep crying, at least 2 kilograms of gummy bears, and of course, 1 huge lesson. Let me introduce you to the 7 stages of grief. We start with the shock, then we move to the denial, then we skip to the anger and the bargaining, then we get to the depression, the testing, and finally, we move on. Now, I want to introduce you to the 7 stages of refactoring, because that's what happens when you take grief and refactor and put them together. I'm going to tell you a tale about our first big refactor that failed badly. It took place around 3 years ago, based on real-life events, and I'm going to tell you exactly what we learned from the process. So during this talk, we'll have multiple takeaways of things that we learned, of do and don'ts on how to deal with refactor. But you're probably wondering how I got into this situation, right? Let me start at the beginning. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Itai, tech lead at Junko, 33 years old. I live in Tel Aviv with my wife Mor, my dog Leah, and the lord of the house, Snuggles, aka Snuggy. So what do we do at Junko? So Junko is a startup in the realm of the HR tech, a booming market in the last 5 years, offering a unique software as a service solution for diversity recruiting. Our technology connects between great and underrepresented talents and companies that are looking to be more inclusive. Now, most of you are probably DevOps people and probably know serverless. Now, specifically, we work with Amazon Web Services, with lambdas and SQL, stuff like that. But you have the alternative in any other cloud provider, so it doesn't really matter. You have in Google, Microsoft, whatever. And the reason we chose that because we have an event-driven architecture. And for us, it's really cost-effective, it's easy to scale, and it reduces the need to maintain servers. Now, I know that you like to maintain servers. Well, we don't. So refactoring. Refactoring is the discipline technique for restructuring an existing body of code and changing it, well, without changing its external behavior. Now, I'm going to talk also about redesigning, but address the entire, let's call it fiasco in our case, as refactoring. Short overview. We'll talk about the product and the data collection process. I'm going to introduce you to the first version of the architecture, then why we change everything, the second version of the architecture of how we want to make everything better, and then finally the 7 stages of refactoring. So let's start. So a little bit of background, so we can understand the context of what happened. So an ATS is an applicant tracking system. Now, if you haven't ever went through an interview process in any company, they have this system. It's an HR tool to manage all the jobs in the company and the candidate interview process. From the screening to the code interview to hiring, rejection, whatever you have, it goes there. Now, all of our clients use one of those systems. There are many different ATSs, and we connect using the API in order to collect all the data that we need. Now, our main feature at Junko is the job matching. Well, a candidate gets rejected from a company, which is one of our clients, and then we take the candidate position, we put it into our job matching algorithm, build a set recommendation for similar jobs, and then send by email a recommendation. Pretty simple. But in order to do that, we need a lot of data. Well, we need all the jobs and all the candidates from all of our clients. So we focus on the data collection of, jobs and candidates, because we want to match a job and a candidate. About jobs, we collect open jobs and jobs that got closed, because there is no reason to recommend on jobs that got closed. It's irrelevant. And of course, candidates that get rejected from the company they work for, they interviewed for, and candidates that applied using Junko for statistics. Now, this is the first version of the architecture. We had 3 lambdas, one MySQL database. Each one of our clients had a daily routine of data collection. We start with the job collector lambda, which collects anything that is job related. Open job, job close, description, title, whatever you need. The lambda handles it and insert or update the database. Then it will trigger the candidate collector that will handle anything that is related to the candidate that got rejected, including resumes and stuff like that. And the candidate sourcing, which is in charge of anything that is candidates that applied using Junko. All of them, one by one, will insert and update information in our database. Now, a bit of numbers in order to understand the context. So 3 years ago, we had around 25,000 jobs in the database and around 200,000 candidates. Now, let me explain a bit about why we did such a big change. Well, first of all, the lifetime of an event, a single event of the Lambda is maximum 15 minutes. It can be 1 second or 15 minutes, but it will time out eventually. If the runtime of the Lambda takes more than the timer that you set, let's say the maximum 15 minutes, it will stop the process, throw a timeout exception, and retry again. So we start to have multiple clients. Most of them really, really big. Lots of jobs, lots of candidates, lots of movement of data inside the ATS, and we couldn't handle everything in one specific Lambda and in one specific event. And of course, there were multiple HTTP requests that we had to make. Because there are some ATSs, the APIs are not really friendly, and you ask for open jobs and you get a list of like bazillion IDs. Then you take one ID, you need to make another HTTP request and get the actual job object or candidate, which is a lot of time and time that we don't have. And of course, those Lambdas were huge. And it's not a good thing. Because if you ever worked with Lambdas, you know the Lambda is like a function. It should be really small and have one purpose. And because of that, it was really, really hard to maintain. Every single Lambda from the 3 Lambdas that we had, that I showed you before, had tons of code, multiple responsibilities. It's really hard to maintain and develop anything around that. So, let's go. I want to show you the second version of the architecture, and finally, we will get to how I destroyed everything. So, we took one Lambda, the job collector, and split it into 4. We try to make this Lambda to tie a flow that is job related. We have one Lambda that collects only open job, really small, single responsibility. And if needed, if we need to make any additional HTTP request, we'll send an event to the get job data. If everything is fine, we'll use the job handler, pass the event to the job handler, and it will process the information and insert or update to the database. Once done, if any jobs are closed, the collect closed jobs Lambda will collect them, send them to the job handler by an event, and of course, insert or update to the database. Pretty simple. Now we took the 2 other Lambdas and split it also into 4, which is exactly the same, only for candidates. One Lambda that's in charge of collecting rejected candidates, the get candidate data for any additional data that we need to collect, the applied candidates for same as the candidate sourcing, tracking candidates that applied using Junko, and finally, the candidate handler that insert or update to the database. Okay, now we have everything, you know what's going on. Let me introduce you to the 7 stages of refactor. We went through a process of 7 stages in order to deal with outfailed refactor. In each one of them, we acted in some sort of way, and we learned a lot. 1 second before that, let me introduce you to the team. Me, you already know. But, if it works, this is Tom. Tom sits right here, by the way. Tom was the second developer in the company. We are the only team, or the only developers at the company that work on that refactor. Tom is my partner in crime. We had a lot of fun together. He's an awesome guy, although we messed up badly. The thing is, I'm not a DevOps. Probably most of you are. I know, boo, but still. I know that you get to the office and you have like, before you even take your morning coffee, like the entire systems break down, you have alerts flying for production and everything failed, and you do it on a regular basis. You're resilient to those things. You don't afraid of things that break around you. Well, unfortunately, me and Tom are not the same. we were really scared when things started to break in production multiple times. So now that we have the background, let's start from the first stage, the hubris. More like a sin, but still. We thought everything is going to be super easy. We knew the code base by heart. We worked almost a year at Junko, developed multiple integration, fixed multiple bugs. We knew everything. Well, we said it's going to take 2 weeks maximum, and we were blinded by the fact that we thought it's going to be so easy. And if I wasn't clear enough, well, this is not a good idea because things start to go south really, really fast. We're just too sure and full of ourselves, and we didn't know exactly what we were doing. So from that first stage, we step right to the second stage, the aftershock. This is the minute that we start to understand that things break piece by piece. And of course, we start to investigate what's going on. Because after a week, when we deployed everything to production, we didn't have any exceptions, any alerts. Everything looks good. But the reason it looks good, well, let me tell you what exactly happened. First of all, the reason we didn't get any exceptions is because the log management wasn't configured properly. We messed that up also. So we didn't get any exceptions or any alerts, not because they didn't exist, only because, well, we didn't make it work. And of course, we had multiple clients that didn't run properly. We didn't get any data. And finally, we had the rate limit issue. Because we had one API, of course, it was the API that serves almost all of our clients, that started to have rate limit issues because now we have 4 lambdas that run concurrently and address the same API. And before we didn't have it. So that ATS API messed everything for us, and we didn't expect that change. Now, from the hubris and the aftershock, we get to the first takeaway of this talk. Well, it's a bit obvious, so I called it the obvious. Well, we should have a proper testing plan. Testing plan and execution plan, which is sometimes is way more important than the design itself, is the first step that you need to take in order to make sure that everything that you're doing, well, works properly, right? So me and Tom, we relied too much on end-to-end tests that we did manually. We didn't have much time for testing. Well, not because we didn't want to, but for 2 reasons. First, the startup, short time to deliver, no money, everything is pressure, and you decide to skip the test. Everyone has been there or you heard some horrific stories about that. Well, for what it's worth, don't do that. So we lacked of experience. Me and Tom never did such a huge refactor and redesign before, and it cost us, well, a lot. Now the fact is, we didn't have any normal test suite, as I mentioned before, barely unit tests, let alone integration tests. We decided to skip it, and it was wrong. And of course, well, you need to brace the unknown, or at least prepare for it, because it's the opposite of hubris. We decided that we know everything, it will be fine because we know every piece of code, and splitting 1 lambda into 4 shouldn't be an issue. Well, of course it was, and you need to prepare for that, because it's the opposite of hubris. Okay, we get to the third stage, the denial. Well, we didn't want to believe it was our fault, right? We knew exactly what we were doing. So we started to push back, full of denial. And the thing is that we started to investigate what went wrong. And because we were so invested in the code and in the change, and we were not objective at all, we didn't want to believe it was our fault. Well, I remember that day when we figured out that everything went wrong. So me and Tom sits in front of one computer, take a look at the database, eating a lot of gummy bears. I know it's weird, but still. And we see that a lot of data is missed. Now you can see there's a lot of data in the database, but you can see that those clients didn't get any job or any candidate. And we take a look at each other, and it was something like, nah, it can't be, ignore it, it's something else. And of course, well, we were wrong. And these are real quotes that I want to share with you. The first one was, we didn't know it was broken before. Makes sense, right? We change everything from here to there. The behavior should be the same. So if something behaved wrong before, it should behave wrong now. And of course, it's a new edge case. We didn't know it exists. It's a new client or a new ATS. We didn't expect that. And my favorite one, it's an easy fix. 20 minutes, it will build production. Like nothing happened. Thing is that we try to be more generic. Make everything better and good, and we missed a lot in the process. Now, finally, we start to accept the fact that we did something wrong, which leads us right to the fourth stage of the refactoring, the acceptance. Well, we need to accept reality as is, because we failed, and we failed up, and we messed up badly. Now, when we start to figure out what went wrong, the first thing that we had to do, well, is accept the fact that we failed, and that is completely okay. Because the first step, in order to improve and learn from our mistakes, well, it's probably failing. So we start with the hubris. And now we accept the reality as is, and it's our fault, a bit more down to earth, which is the exact opposite. But what we learned from the denial and the accepted stages, there are two takeaways. First, I want to introduce you to the failure as a service. Well, you need to own up to your mistakes. And it's okay to fail. Now, the thing is, no one is perfect, and you need to embrace that fact. But let me dig a bit deeper into it. First, it's okay to fail, as I mentioned before. But not alone, you need to enable the margin of error to your other teammates. Luckily for us, we got the chance to mess up and fail big time. And trust me, we learned a lot from this process. But the thing is that if someone would tell me for the first time, you need to do this exactly like this and exactly like that, well, I probably wouldn't have been standing here today, but I wouldn't learn it for myself. So we learn from failures, and it's really important. And you don't need to be afraid to say things like, I need more time to research that, or I don't know. Usually we tend to not do that. You've been assigned to some task, don't worry, I'll figure it out. But sometimes it's okay to say, wait, I need another day or two to exactly know what's going on. Because you need to remember that usually the first attempt at something new is likely to fail. And it's not because of you, it's just how it is. And the second takeaway, before we finish with the failure as a service, I call it the fresh. New issues call for a new perspective. Because sometimes you are not objective, you have no idea what you are doing, and you have some sort of tunnel vision, and you want to bail out. So when in doubt, you need to zoom out. It's right for the stock market for some specific, really specific points, but it's also right for software development. Because luckily, we have lots of good friends, me and Tom, that are software developers, DevOps, stuff like that. And we start to make calls to friends and old colleagues to ask for their opinion, show them the use case, tell them exactly what went wrong and what we're dealing with, and ask for their opinion. Because an outsider perspective is usually fresh, and it's really, really important, let alone when you are two developers that are not objective at all. So it looks something like that. Luckily, we have the DevOps master, the AWS, the QA, the designer, everything we need. We had a go-to person, which is amazing. But yet, we might need some more professional help. And if sometimes you're understaffed or don't have any funds, or not funds, you're understaffed, but you can't hire anyone, how about an outsourced help? There are lots of remote developers or in-house developers that you can hire for specific project. They have a specific set of expertise that usually you lack, and you can ask them to, or pay them to work at the office and help you in that specific project. Of course, if that is not possible, or you don't want that, which is okay, how about a consultant? Because most of the time, we just need someone to point us in the right direction, to tell us exactly what we need to hear, or what we need to do. And usually, those people have more experience than us. Now, you can invite them to the office. They might be outsourced. They might be your friends. Buy pizza and beer. It's usually well in the budget. Present them with the task or the change or the refactor that you're going to make, and ask for their opinion. They will be objective, and they will help you because usually they want you. And remember, fresh perspective is a great one.
In that situation, microphone,
we accept the reality as is.
How much you can hear. Okay? Not here. If you see the here, please pull it.
We accept the reality as is. But now, we need to learn from our mistakes, right? You can't just keep on going. Well, it's time for retrospective. It's going to be fun. So, there is a holy trifecta of, besides the retrospective, there are three tools that help you draw conclusions.
Can I put this down in a...
The first one is the retrospective. Now, retrospective is a great tool if done properly. It gives everyone a chance to be heard. There is no hierarchy. Everyone can contribute. It's usually really great. And I want to talk a bit about retrospective, exactly how I think it should be done. Retrospective, first of all, must be blameless and professional. It's not a boxing ring. It's not a battle royale. You come in order to improve and figure out what went wrong. But retrospective the base of retrospective are three questions. You have what went well during the sprint, what didn't go well, what could be done better next time. Well, that's there are lots of versions that you have 2 questions or 5, but you do whatever you want, everything what suits for you. And the outcome of a retrospective is a list of action items. Sorry. The action items are specific tasks that you need to do in order to improve for the next and future sprints, which are really important. Now I want to give you a glimpse to our first retrospective for that time. What didn't go well? Of course, I have like 10 more points, but I want to focus on 4. Well, first of all, we had poor testing. As I mentioned before, we didn't have any testing plan. We did it manually. It wasn't good enough.
Okay.
And of course, we didn't spend enough time code reviewing each other.
Okay.
The thing is that we had massive pull requests, really, really big. Nothing was focused on the change. You had like a pull request of, I don't know, 50 or 100 files, and you can't really do a good quality code review that way, right? Everyone knows that. So we just merged everything into the master and deployed it, and well, it was wrong. And of course, we didn't monitor the database and traffic after the change. We didn't have any dashboards or stuff like that. Afterwards, we created, but we didn't have any dashboards or things that will alert us on those issues. So we monitored it manually. And of course, what went well? Well, we had a great teamwork. Me and Tom worked great together. It was a lot of fun and really productive. We did poor quality of work, but still, it was really fun. And we asked for help when needed. It might be from friends, other colleagues, managers. And the thing is that we had a really good initial design, because until today, most of the design that we have in Junko is the base of what I showed you from that time. So we did something good. Poured it badly, but we did it good. And of course, a list of action items. Well, we need to test and deploy gradually. If we do it manually, take the lambdas piece by piece, deploy them, test the integration between them like you should, and test the entire flow. We decided that code requests, the pull requests should be smaller for better code review. And not only smaller, but more focused about the change that we were doing. So we'll be able to actually know what is the change. And of course, daily data validation after big changes, deploy something to production, own up to it, and make sure it works. I know it's scary, but do that. And the results, well, because of that retrospective of that time, we improved the quality of the code, more code review, more standards. We do everything better now. The system is more stable. We found new use cases that we didn't think about before. And of course, we fixed multiple issues before they even crashed in production, which was really fun. Now, the key points for a good retrospective, first of all, you need to encourage honesty, because if no one is talking about what went during the sprint, it's not helpful. And you need to be open for feedback. And of course, promote shared responsibility, because those 2 things, with the fact that everything is blameless, it's what makes you learn from your mistakes, because you talk exactly about what went wrong and why in order to improve. And of course, list of action items, precise action items that are really, really good. Now, we told you there are 3 tools. Now, we started with the retrospective, but how about postmortem? So, I'm not going to argue that postmortem is a bad thing. Of course not. It's a different tool for different issues. Postmortem is usually incident-based. Something happened, you have a bug in production, everything crashed, you wake up in the middle of the night, and you fix everything. You get up, day after, you go to the office and you start investigating what went wrong. You focus on what went wrong. You describe exactly what caused the issue, what was the impact, the company impact, the user impact, stuff like that. And you end with a list of conclusion of how we fixed it, why, how could you avoid it next time. But retrospective is about continuous improvement, because it's sprint-based. Every 2 weeks, or whatever the length of your sprint is, you have a retrospective and you have a list of action items in order to learn and improve for next and future sprints. Now, post-mortem, if you don't have any issues for a month or 2, well, you don't learn anything. And that is bad. So you need to use the 2 of them, not only one of them. Now, one of the post-mortems we had, really long time ago, it looks something like that. Post-mortem must be blameless. We just wanted to blame each other, so it won't be our fault, but don't do that. It doesn't look good. It's not professional. We don't want that. And finally, because I said there are 3 pieces, Well, we have the pre-mortem. So what if we could predict the future? Or just think about what will go wrong before it even happens? So in pre-mortem, we gather everyone with relevant experience, might be from our team, different teams, product owners, whoever might be relevant, gather them in one room, present them with the task that they're going to do, and ask them to pick holes in your plan. Then we talk about how exactly we are going to make it better. But if the crystal ball and future talk reference wasn't clear for you, and you're a gamer for the 90s like I did, here in Israel at least, this one is for you. Wasn't so fun, but okay. So a good pre-mortem starts with the fact that you present the task or the issue, you say why we need it, and how we're going to implement it. Then you give everyone in the room the option to talk about issues. Look for issues. Everything you can think that can go wrong and I didn't talk about, let me know. I address those issues and refine my design. It makes my plan, well, a bit better. Now with Junko, we decided to add another part to the pre-mortem. Because we didn't have a proper testing plan, we added another section to the pre-mortem that talks about, well, testing. We call it the test gathering, or in Hebrew, mifgash testing, because we talk about testing. You need to elaborate exactly what was the testing plan and how are you going to validate that everything works properly. Because it was missing, and we added that, and it works great, at least for us. So what's next? So you know the feeling that after a good retrospective, you go outside the room full of motivation to change and improve, and you're saying to yourself, I'm not going to make the same mistakes again, I'm going to be awesome. So what do you think was my next move after I went outside that retrospective? Did I act on those action items? Well, wrong. We just ignored it, because that's what usually happens. Now let me tell you how we handle it. The thing is that when we go outside the room of the retrospective, we tend to forget. And it's not because we don't care. It's because we are going back to the same task routine or the new planning, new task that we have to do. So we just usually forget about it. Now we decided that we sometimes just need a reminder of how everything is going to be. Now, what are those action items? So we created a checklist. It is the takeaway from this stage. We decided that we want to review the action items daily. And we created the boards of do and don'ts. Me and Tom was sitting one in front of the other. We had a blank board between us, and we wrote all the action items that we need to follow. And we kept asking ourselves, are we making the same mistakes? Lots of times the answer was yes, but sometimes it was no. But then we're still minded to all of those things that we need to remember. Now, if you're using Scrum and you're having a daily, this is a really good time to talk about those action items. You don't have to do it daily because it might be annoying, but every day of the week, but once or twice a week, just to remind everyone what they should do in order to improve in the next, the current sprint. Now, we're getting to the 7th and final stage of the gRefactoring. Then moving on, finally. Because we learned from our mistakes, we did a good retrospective, we talked about pre-mortem and post-mortem, and we need to keep on going, right? So we decided to zoom out and take a broad view of our system. We double and triple checked everything. We had a test for a specific use case and flow. We tried to predict what will go wrong. Sometimes we succeeded, and sometimes we didn't, but still. I think that as long as we are minded to those things, first of all, it's really important.
Can I just put my bag right next to the stage, like when I go up?
More productive, and better software engineers or DevOps or product or whatever you're working at. Because learning from your mistakes, it's really important. But moving on, it's even more. So let's actually move on. Because the final takeaway from this talk, I call it the MacGyver. Because everyone needs to be more like MacGyver. Now, we need to prepare for ourselves for better for whatever challenges lie ahead. Now, the reason MacGyver is so awesome and escaping impossible situations, it's not because his glasses or cool hair. It's because he spent his entire life learning and preparing for those specific moments. Now, in a startup, you have a small team, no time, no money. Well, you need to adapt and overcome. That is just how it is. The thing is that you need to criticize your own work. Because once me and Tom started doing that, everything became better. We didn't assume we knew exactly what we were doing. We tried to criticize ourselves and each other's work. Tests, code, everything that is possible just to improve as much as possible. And of course, you need to prepare for change. Change is inevitable. It will come, regardless if you want it or not. It's a question of how well you are going to prepare for that change. And the thing is that, again, you need a proper testing plan, proper execution plan, because if you have everything written down and organized, you will be ready for those changes. And the thing is that in the present, we build the foundation for our future selves to work faster and better, which is really, really, really important.
Hey, sure.
And of course, improvise when needed. You just
so.
start a part of startup life. Everyone wants to be the Swiss Army of MacGyver to do everything or whatever you can, and sometimes you just need to improvise. The thing is, we made an impact on our organization, and that's what matters. Because we started with 2 developers, now we're way more, and this matters because the things that we learned from our first refactor that failed and failed badly, all of those lessons, all of those takeaways that we talk about today, we pass on to new recruits. Every junior developer or new developer that comes to Junko, we tell them the tale about how me and Tom messed up and how we learned from that process. Because that thing shaped how we do retrospective, how we do post-mortem, pre-mortem, how we make a proper testing plan and execution plan, and everything that we do in the R&D is because of those things. Let's recap. We started with the Hubris.
Seattle.
Full of
The
ourselves.
States.
Sure, everything would be easy.
The States.
And we moved right into the Aftershock. Things broke down.
And visit
piece
some
by
customers, you know.
piece. And of course, we stepped into the
for work.
denial. We didn't want to believe it was our fault, and it took us a while. And we moved to the acceptance stage. We accepted reality as is, and now it's time to start to draw conclusions. We talked about the retrospective, pre-mortem, post-mortem. We ignored the conclusion that we just drawn, but then we fixed it, and finally, we moved on. Now, I know usually, at least for me, I need a good acronym to remember those things. For you, Adadim. Don't forget that. And the main takeaways, we had the obvious, which we talked about that you need to have a proper testing and execution plan, which is really important. Then we move to the fresh and the failure as a service. We talk about
platform services, like for developers to make it easier for build applications.
Perspective is a great perspective. We talked about the retrospective with pre-mortem and post-mortem, that all of them must be blameless and professional.
I'm a rabbi.
And we talked about the checklist,
just kidding.
which
It's close.
the awesome way not to forget about the action items for the retrospective. And of course, the MacGyver, just be more like him.
Oh, wow.
But what is going on today? So today we back in the day, we started with 2 developers. Only me and Tom. Today we are more than 10. Back in the day, we were 4 employees at Junko. Now we're almost 50. Now the company grew big time. And now when we have a development process, we have pre-mortem, we have post-mortem, we have retrospective, we have a testing plan, a proper execution plan, and we think about everything that we learned from those mistakes. And shaped exactly how it's going.
Well, you have to watch my presentation. You'll see my contact info at the end.
Try to be better at what we do, because all of us has one similar goal, and it's to make an awesome product.
I'll be doing it in English, obviously. אני מדבר קצת עברית, so
go through an excruciating process
good that I can do it in English.
In order to deal with refactoring. It just doesn't make sense.
No, it's just
but if
fine.
you don't work in a well-organized
Tomorrow I'm going
way,
to Jerusalem, and most of the people there
an execution plan,
the government that we're meeting with, a lot of them don't actually speak English very well.
Really fast.
Yeah.
But when we do
IT and government, they're not so good.
It's really important to learn from other people's experience that did before us. Usually we're not doing things for the first time that are really, really new.
Just a week this time.
Someone who did that before us.
I was here right before the pandemic for two weeks with my family.
This is the main key in order to avoid the grief.
For vacation.
Now the thing is that my goal here today was to
Are we blocking
my mistakes? Sorry. And you can ignore everything that I told you today, and that is fine. But you might find yourselves next year standing in my place and talking about
it was right after my son's bar mitzvah, so vacation.
But thing is that I really hope
this is like my 10th time
something new
in
today.
Israel.
And I hope you learn from our mistakes, And I really, really hope
I like visiting.
saves
It's
you a lot
nice.
of time, money.
It's my
and misery.
people. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.